Welcome to today's lecture, where our focus will be on justice. It might seem odd to talk about justice when discussing media ethics, but when we think of justice as more than just a legal concern, it becomes clear that it's essential to media practices. Justice is deeply tied to fairness, something that plays a key role in how we perceive the validity of media communication. In today's lecture, we'll explore why justice is so important for the media, both in terms of how media professionals behave and the content they produce. Fairness is at the heart of media ethics. The decisions media professionals make, whether in news, PR, or advertising, can either uphold or violate public expectations of fairness. From the content that's covered to the framing of stories, fairness is a central ethical value that media professionals must consider when communicating with the public. It's through these decisions that media plays a role in shaping society's idea of what's just and fair. It's important to understand that justice is not just for the courts. It's essential for any functioning society. The media is a powerful institution, influencing social norms, values, and public perceptions of what is fair. As part of society's justice framework, the media has a responsibility to uphold fairness and contribute to the common good. Media professionals must consider how their actions impact broader societal values like justice and equality. Philosopher John Rawls proposed a theory of justice called justice as fairness. According to Rawls, justice should not only be about fairness, but also about addressing inequities in power, wealth, and opportunities. For media professionals, this means considering how decisions affect the most vulnerable groups in society. Rawls's framework helps us understand that media's role is not just to report facts, but also to ensure fairness in the distribution of information, power, and resources. Now, justice, according to classical philosophy, integrates all other virtues. In media, this means that justice is not just about avoiding harm, but about actively promoting fairness, equality, and social good. Media decisions have a broader impact than just providing information. They influence public understanding of what is just. As professionals in the media field, our responsibility is to uphold justice as a core value that drives our actions and decisions. Political philosopher Salah Benabib critiques Rawls's theory, arguing that his idea of idealized individuals doesn't reflect the complexities of real life. Benabib calls for justice to be grounded in the realities of individual lives, particularly marginalized people. In media, this means acknowledging the concrete other, the unique circumstances, histories, and needs of real people. For media professionals, this critique is a call to reflect on how media coverage can perpetuate or address real world inequalities. Historically, justice has been about the avoidance of harm. Ancient moral systems like the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule emphasized not harming others. However, modern views of justice expand beyond just avoiding harm. Today, justice is closely linked to fairness, equality, and social good. Media professionals must therefore consider how their work aligns with these broader definitions of justice, ensuring they contribute to fairness and equality in society. The key point here is that media is not just a channel for information. It's also a powerful tool for shaping perceptions of justice. Whether journalists or PR professionals, media practitioners play a key role in advocating for fairness and equality in society. Their decisions about what stories to cover, how to frame issues, and whom to represent all have an impact on the public's understanding of justice. Media must contribute to society's moral and ethical framework by helping create a more just world. One example of justice in media is the ongoing debate over advertising to children. Cereal companies like Kellogg came under fire for marketing sugary cereals directly to children, a vulnerable audience. After pressure from advocacy groups, companies like Kellogg agreed to stop these practices. This case highlights how public advocacy and corporate responsibility play a role in promoting justice in media. Advertisers must consider how their messages impact society's most vulnerable groups. Another interesting case involves the New York Times and the LA Times exposing a government surveillance program. Despite pressure from the Bush administration to keep the story secret, the newspaper decided to publish, arguing that the public had a right to know. This decision reflects the media's responsibility to promote justice by ensuring transparency and holding powerful institutions accountable, even when it may conflict with national security interests. Generally speaking, media has always played a key role in shaping public opinion, influencing social norms, and setting the tone for important issues. When media platforms act ethically, they can promote fairness, justice, and equality, advocating for the marginalized and the oppressed. Media can also be a platform for bringing forward critical conversations about injustice, whether in terms of race, gender, or economic inequality. As gatekeepers of information, media practitioners must act with integrity, ensuring they maintain public trust while promoting justice through their coverage. In reflecting on Rawls's ideas, the prominent philosopher who proposed that justice should be based on fairness, one key element of his theory is the veil of ignorance, which suggests that decisions about justice should be made as if you didn't know your own position in society. Now, this concept is crucial for media professionals. When making ethical decisions, media professionals should strive to act impartially and consider how their actions might affect everyone, especially the most vulnerable. By applying Rawls's theory, media outlets can work towards fairer, more inclusive coverage that serves the broader society. Now, impartiality is one of the cornerstones of ethical journalism. Journalists must avoid presenting biased or one sided stories, as doing so undermines public trust and skews perceptions of justice. By presenting a balanced and fair representation of facts, journalists allow their audience to make informed judgments. Justice, in this sense, means giving all perspectives a fair platform and avoiding the distortion of reality through selective reporting and misinformation. When reporting on sensitive issues like violence, trauma, or systematic injustice, media professionals must act with the utmost care and respect. These topics can be deeply emotional and, in some cases, may harm the people involved or reinforce harmful stereotypes. Ethical journalists must carefully balance the public's right to know with the potential harm that such stories may cause. They must ask themselves whether the public interest outweighs any potential risk to vulnerable individuals, ensuring that their work serves justice without causing unnecessary harm. With the rise of social media, the landscape of media ethics has fundamentally changed. Social media platforms like X, Instagram, and TikTok can be powerful tools for social justice, allowing marginalized voices to be heard on a global scale. However, these platforms also present new challenges such as the spread of misinformation, privacy violations, and online harassment. Media professionals working in the digital space must navigate these ethical concerns by moderating content responsibly, promoting accurate information, and ensuring that the platforms remain tools for justice rather than division. Now, the issue of media ownership is central to the ethical questions surrounding justice in the media. In many countries, a smaller number of corporations control the majority of media outlets, which can limit the diversity of voices and viewpoints presented to the public. This concentration of media power raises questions about fairness, as media owners may prioritize their corporate interests over providing comprehensive coverage of social justice issues. A just media system requires diversity, ensuring that a wide range of perspectives, especially those of the marginalized communities, are represented. It's important to understand that media representation plays a huge role in shaping public perceptions of race, gender, class, and identity. Stereotyping, whether intentional or not, can perpetuate social injustices and reinforce harmful narratives about marginalized groups. Ethical media practices involve more than just avoiding harmful stereotypes. They also require actively working towards inclusivity and diversity. Media can promote justice by representing people and communities in a nuanced and respectful way, avoiding reductive portrayals that limit understanding and perpetuate inequality. As media professionals, one of the toughest ethical dilemmas we face is whether we can be both advocates for social justice and maintain objectivity in our work. Journalists are often seen as impartial observers, while PR professionals typically work on behalf of their clients, often promoting specific agendas. The challenge lies in balancing activism and ethical practices, promoting justice without compromising professional integrity. Is it then possible to advocate for a cause while also ensuring that we maintain fairness and objectivity in our reporting and messaging? That's the key question here. Media coverage of social movements like the Black Lives Matter movement often comes with the risk of misrepresentation and sensationalism. Media outlets have the power to frame the narrative, which can either support or undermine the goals of these movements. Journalists and media professionals have an ethical responsibility to represent the voices of activists accurately and to avoid sensationalizing or distorting their message. An ethical approach to covering social justice movements means giving activists control over their own narratives and ensuring that their voices are heard without interference or external biases. Let's move our discussion a bit to the political spectrum. Now, the media plays a vital role in the political process by informing the public about candidates, policies, and events. Ethical and unbiased coverage is essential for a fair democracy, as it ensures voters can make informed decisions. However, media bias, whether intentional or not, can distort public perception and undermine political justice by favoring certain candidates or parties. To maintain fairness, the media must strive for balanced, accurate reporting that presents multiple perspectives and focuses on facts, not sensational details, ensuring a transparent and just political system. We have been discussing much of Rawls's ideas throughout this lecture, but I want to segue into his principles. Now, his first principle of justice advocates for maximum liberty for everyone. Negotiators behind the veil of ignorance, he believes, who are unaware of their own social position, reject any system that disproportionately benefit the strong. Whether considering Nietzsche's elite centric approach or the utilitarian goal of maximizing happiness, negotiators, Rawls believes, must quickly realize that fairness demands equal liberties for all. Rawls's conception of justice as fairness demands that liberties are only restricted when they infringe on others' freedom. The goal is to create a society where everyone's basic liberties are equally protected. With the first principle established, Rawls contends that negotiators must turn their attention to the second principle, how to address scarcity. Since resources are limited, and Rawls calls anything people might want primary goods, in this context, negotiators must recognize that inequalities are only justifiable if they improve the position of society's least disadvantaged. For example, extra resources for medical professionals could be acceptable if it is ultimately beneficial to the most vulnerable in society. The key takeaway here is that justice requires that inequalities work to benefit everyone, particularly those at the bottom. Rawls argues that the first principle takes precedence. Liberty, he says, cannot be sacrificed for economic gain, and inequalities can only be justified if they provide advantages for the most disadvantaged members of society. Furthermore, Rawls acknowledges that the two principles may sometimes come into conflict, particularly when liberty is restricted to create economic inequalities. However, the principle of serial application ensures that liberty always takes precedence. In other words, no one's fundamental liberties can be sacrificed for the sake of economic benefits, ensuring that justice is rooted in the fairness at all levels. But what exactly is the value of Rawls's ethics? One of Rawls's greatest contributions is that his theory avoids the temptation of creating a utopian society. Instead, Rawls offers a realistic ethical framework where individuals can come to rational agreements on the principles of justice. This promotes stability in society as people are motivated to act justly because they know their well being depends on the fairness of the system. Like other theories, Rawls's theory has faced strong critiques, particularly from feminist scholars who argued that his emphasis on justice and fairness is male centric. They argue that a focus on justice excludes the importance of care and relational ethics, often associated with women's role in domestic and caregiving spaces. They suggest that Rawls's framework fails to address the moral value of caring relationships, which is essential for understanding how people engage with one another in society.